This is Townsquare Sunday on 1420 WBSM, a place where people come together to talk about some of the good things happening in and around New Bedford. A place to share, a place on the radio for the people.
Come together right now over me.
And now, the moderator of Townsquare Sunday, 1420 WBSM's Jim Phillips.
Well, I'm not Jim Phillips. Good morning and welcome to Townsquare Sunday. I'm Kasey Silvia, filling in for Jim Phillips. Each week, we highlight members of the South Coast community and organizations that make this part of the world a better place to live. Our first guest this weekend is attorney John Quinn. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Attorney Quinn is a member of the New England Fisheries Management Council. Their job is to work with fishermen, scientists, and environmental groups to preserve fish stocks while allowing fish industry to survive and hopefully continue to grow. And when he's not doing that, he serves as Director of Public Service Law Programs at UMass Dartmouth. Welcome, Attorney Quinn.
Thank you very much for having me. Let's
talk fishing first. Where are we with Sector 9 dispute between ground fishermen and NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmosphere Administration? As a member of the council, did you feel that the ban on fishing in Sector 9 that was handed down by NOAA went too far? Many fishermen did.
Sure. I think probably a little background would be necessary to lead up to that. So, as many of your listeners know, this is a hot issue, the Sector 9 situation. So, Mr. Raphael, who was a member, his vessels were a member of the Sector 9. Basically, NOAA pulled the operations permit, said stop fishing in the middle of November. And since that time, there's been ongoing negotiations on reopening Sector 9. Then in late March, the sector system is a very complicated system, but it's largely vessels get together and pool their quota and kind of fish as a group so they can lease to each other and share quota, and depends on which boats go out. So
it's a team effort.
Team effort. That's said better than I can explain. 2 words. And they pool their resources and effort, and it's a team effort. So every year you've got to re-up or kind of re-sign up for your sector. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in late March there was a proposal, and you can switch sectors. You know, it's far more complicated than I can go into. But so a bunch of the Sector 9 boats have proposed transferring to Sector 7, a different sector, still in New Bedford.
Yep. And
then only making it lease only, which they could lease the quota, not actually keeping Sector 9 as a lease only, leasing it, not actually fishing. So if that makes sense. So the negotiation has switched from just dealing with Sector 9.
So they're changing to their role. They're moving and changing their
exactly,
role. Yep.
Right. So the first set of negotiations was on getting Sector 9 back fishing. Now there's this new proposal, which is have most of the Sector 9 boats go into Sector 7. So that's the newest negotiation. So it's ongoing. So I'm confident it's going to be resolved sooner rather than later. The fishing year started May the 1st. I know people were hopeful to get the boats back out fishing and working as of May the 1st. But with this new angle on it, I think it's taken more time. I know I've talked to people on both sides of it. I've urged NOAA to resolve the thing as quickly as possible to get people back to work. At the same time, we've got laws and regulations of federal hoops that got to be jumped through to get the boats back fishing. So I'm confident it's going to be resolved in a relatively soon process with time to fish the quota. Again, it's not a days at sea thing. On the Scallop side, it's in part you can only fish so many days, whereas the quota can be fished throughout the year. So I'm confident it'll get a good resolution to it. I know it's been extremely frustrating to a lot of people, including me, but I hope it's going to be resolved in a timely fashion.
Well, I'm glad that you sound hopeful. Fishermen always complain about the federal government's science. You know, it's not up to date, it's not complete, doesn't rely on enough research. Is it getting any better in your view?
Sure, I think it is, and I think one of the reasons that I sense the frustration. I've been around the waterfront in various capacities for 30 years. I know the frustration. I felt it myself. I think there's been a move to have more collaborative research, to have the fishermen actually on the boats, measuring the gear, participating in the actual assessment. So, you know, instead of having a group of scientists from Woods Hole going out on a boat and saying, hey, this is what we saw, there's much more involvement of the fishing industry, and S-Mast is involved. A lot of industry people involved now. I think, even if the outcome is not what the fishermen hope for, they actually believe it a lot more if they participated in it. So I'm confident we're heading in the right direction, and I know there's been many years of bad science, good science. I hear it every meeting I go to. There's more fish than I've ever seen, and the scientist says it's the less fish I've ever seen. So trying to close that gap between industry and science, and I think the best way is to collaborate more, have the scientists and the fishermen on the boat at the same time.
I think that's a good idea. No more contradictions. You mentioned the scallopers earlier. NOAA has come down hard on ground fishermen, partly because of the misdeeds of Carlos Rafael. But what about scallopers? Do you see more regulations coming for that part of the industry?
I think the scallop industry is very well managed. It's New Bedford is really the scallop capital of the world, both in landings and both in poundage and dollar volume. It's a big part of making New Bedford the #1 port in the country for value for I think it's 16 straight years. So I think it's regulated well, and ironically, there's so much more involvement by the actual scallop industry in that research than in the groundfish. So, I think, they've got a research set-aside program. They've set aside some of the catch to do research. They put that out to bid or, through a process. So I think the regulations are pretty sound and working well, and I think people both on the science side and the industry side are pretty satisfied right now with the way the scallop industry is going.
So positive. I'm loving this. 15 years from now, what will the commercial fishing industry look like?
Wow, Jim wrote that question?
Jim wrote that question.
I see, like in every sector of industry, technology being far more in place, both on the assessment side as well as the technology on the boats. I think, gone are the days of, no technology. I mean, you go on a boat now, there's a lot of technology. I think it just is going to be increasing. They're talking, I know there's some companies talking about putting sensors on the dredges to see what they see. I know some boats put GoPro cameras in the nets. I know S-Mast has done that with GoPro to see what's coming to the net. So I think technology is going to take over fishing just like it has taken over a lot of other industries.
I believe it. And we mentioned before the offshore wind. Can you speak to anything about that and how that might affect, 15 years from now? Sure.
No, it's a great question, and I think it's a very, very, very important question. I view wind very positively, but we've got a booming waterfront now on the fishing side. So I view wind not to replace fishing, but to complement it. By bringing in wind, if you put the fishing out of business, you're at the same spot. If you lost the big fishing, so I think it's very important to, again, this word collaboration. They got to work closely. I know one of the companies just got the first round of bids, Vineyard Wind, and I hope they're going to work cooperatively. I know Mayor Mitchell and a lot of people in the industry are trying to work together with the wind and the fishing. So again, I like to look at the glass as half full, not half empty. I think there's a lot of smart people around the table that will get a balance between bringing wind in but protecting and expanding the fishing.
We're talking with attorney John Quinn, a member of the New England Regional Fisheries Management Council, and he's also the director of public interest law programs at the UMass School of Law. Let's shift gears now to the law school. There have been some ups and downs, but the UMass School of Law has pretty much been an 8-year success story since its approval by the State Board of Higher Education in February 2010. The school is fully accredited by the American Bar Association, and students are passing the bar at a high rate. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's a great story, and I'd love to have my boss, Dean Mitnick, on, because he's certainly a newsmaker in the industry, to talk in more detail, or our new Chancellor Johnson, who's doing a great job. But no, we're trending up. Our bar pass rate is going up. Our job placement rate is going up. Our enrollment is going up. So all the indicators are pointing in the right direction, and it's a great feeling to see how we've we've surpassed in many areas the other law schools that were trying to stop us from being created 8 years ago. So it's a good feeling of pride of the people that are working there and have been there for many years. And I think the best is yet to come with the law school.
I do have one success story for you. My boyfriend's older brother, Stephen Dudek, graduated, I want to say it was like 2014, 2015, and he's doing great. He's a lawyer down in D.C., and he's just loving life. And so, UMass Law, it's a great school. And so,
what if I tell you Stephen Dudek was my student, and he's working for the D.C. Tenant Advocacy Program in Washington, D.C.?
I wonder if I mention the name, he'll know.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh,
No, he's a classic example of how great, he came in, hard worker, had an interesting background, got one job locally, got that job, he's loving it, and
he's doing very well. Yeah. So UMass Law, nothing but good things to say about it.
There's many more examples just like Stephen of success out of there. So.
Oh, I love to hear that. Just by way of explanation, the focus of UMass School of Law is public interest law or public service law. What is that?
Yeah, sure. So it's actually one of the it's part of the mission is public interest law, but we have approximately 30% of the students go into public interest law, but 70% go into private business. So it's not just for public service people. We take people. But with all that being said as background, public interest, public service law are assistant DAs, public defenders, lawyers in state and federal agencies working on public policy. So we've got a wide mix of things going on. I run the Public Interest Law Fellowship Program as part of my duties that we work with students specifically, and Stephen was one of them, work with them specifically towards that goal, train them while they're there, and help them get their placements afterwards. So it's a great, we're #1 in Massachusetts, #1 in New England, and I think #3 in the country for public interest.
That deserves a round of applause there. In your position, you assist law students in obtaining those internships and jobs. How difficult is that?
Well, I think it's about relationships, and with declining budgets in some areas, it's a challenge. But we've got a good product to sell with the students that we trained, and so we've had a great success placing them through my program in the Career Services Office. And I gotta again tip my hat. Dean Mitnick is really the leader, allows us to do this, and so it's about relationships and quality students. Putting them. So we're proud of it.
It's a good match. Students also provide reduced fee legal services to lower income clients through the Justice Bridge program in Boston and New Bedford. How does that work?
Sure, yeah, we've got students, and that's public interest law related. We have an incubator, so we've got not current students, but recently graduated students who, the data shows that the most time you spend as a new lawyer is trying to find clients. So we, with a collaboration with various nonprofits and legal services agencies, including the Attorney General's office locally, we get referrals, and we have, I think it's about 15 lawyers in the two places, but more importantly, we have 60 mentors, retired judges, retired lawyers, prominent people that want to help out, and so they work with the newly minted lawyers on these cases. And reduced fee, they call it low bono. These are the people that did not qualify for free service, they have little income, and so we charge them a rate of like $50 to $100 as opposed to the $200 to $300 that you would get, in the private industry. So it's reduced fee, low bono, reduced for people in a certain income bracket. So it's been a great success. Like as you said, we've got a New Bedford location on Union Street. We've got one up in Boston in the financial district, and again, there's some great stories of both students and satisfied clients coming out of that as well.
So the students are getting the experience they need to eventually become the great lawyers that they always aspire to be.
Exactly. In the term incubator, we incubate lawyers so people stay there, and then they now feel comfortable to spread their own wings and go out and practice on their own. So we've got, brand new lawyers. Then we've got people, have been, usually they move on after, the ideal is 18 months to 2 years, then they go out, feel confident enough, and have enough of their own business to start their own practice.
In your view, does the law school have the necessary support it needs to survive any future challenges?
As I said, I look at the glass half full, not half empty. Yes, we've got, success breeds success. As I said, all the indicators of bar pass, job placement, and enrollment are heading in the right direction. We've got great stories to tell about our students. So, like any other institution, we'll have challenges along the way. But I think, as I said, the best is yet to come, and we're happy to take on any challenges.
My thanks to John Quinn, who is wearing two hats today as a member of the New England Fisheries Management Council and Director of Public Interest Law Programs at the UMass School of Law in Dartmouth. There's a lot going on in both areas. Stay with us. Townsquare Sunday returns in just a moment.